Welcome! You're listening to Making Relationships Work. We're a company focused on women and their marriage. We lead and teach women just like you how to grow into and access, whenever you need to, your wise woman self, the part of you who is deeply connected to your purpose, your innate wisdom, and your husband and family. We teach women in marriages how to rebuild trust and connection, to work through conflicts, no matter how deep, no matter how painful, and to lead your marriage to a place where the two of you experience marriage mastery. This podcast is about learning the systems and techniques that truly work to reconnect you back into your marriage so that you can experience the freedom that comes with a masterful marriage. Since this podcast is totally free, if you're getting tons of value and you want to support us and make sure that you get more of this good stuff, subscribe below and rate and review our podcast today. Now, on to the show. Hello, Women Making Marriages Work, our Facebook group, and hello to people watching or listening on my YouTube channel, or hello if you're listening on our podcast channel. So, my darlings, we are going to talk about why humans repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Because most of us do that quite often, and all of us have done it before. And so we're going to talk about how when you repeat over and over again, there's a clue in that. And we're going to talk about the antidotes. And we're going to talk about what it feels like to be stuck in that repetition space. And we're going to talk about the antidotes. So let's get going. So the very first thing we want to start is the idea that when we repeat something, we're doing it for a purpose. The purpose might be conscious, as in you might understand why you're doing it, and it might be unconscious. It might just be a habitual response, or it might be one of those things that's turned into a heuristic. So your brain does it automatically, and it hasn't been checked for a while. So you haven't thought, oh, I don't know if I want to do that this way. It's just the way we've always done it. And humans and human brains love a good heuristic. And a heuristic is a rule of thumb. It's like, if this, then that. And our brain, being the efficiency machines that they are, they like to find the ways to cut through and just get it done. But it can be something that gets in our way because it doesn't, once it's sort of written and it's running, we don't tend to go back and check on the coding that we've done or the rules that we've set, or the things that we inherited around the way we respond to situations. We just assume that the way we do them is right, and we assume it's going to work, and we don't really think about it too much. And so that's fine if it's a habitual response of driving a car to work. Remember those good old days when we could all go to work? And you can just take the same route at the same time, and it's the same kind of experience. That's a good heuristic to use. But it doesn't work when there's roadworks or traffic problems or inclement weather. That's when we need to switch it into consciousness and make a different decision. And so it is when you're looking at anything psychological. If you're looking at a habit that you have that doesn't serve you, like biting your nails, or if you've got a habit in your marriage that isn't working for you anymore, but it's not something you're really aware of just yet. You're in the same old driving to work at 7 a.m, haven't really thought about it version of showing up in your marriage, then you're going to be in a space where you're not understanding that you've got a problem in the way that you're showing up, because you'll see it as the environment or the person's fault. Does that make sense? So if we use the traffic analogy and you're driving to work, oh my gosh, how wonderful would it be to be back in our cars, and you're getting yourself to work in the same way you've always done it. But what happens is you've got a car smash or a car crash, and you haven't had the radio on. You've been listening to this YouTube instead, or listening to me on a podcast. And so all of a sudden you're caught in a traffic jam. Then you're going to next time remember and check probably, or you'll remember and your brain will say it's unlikely that that will happen again. Off we'll go. We'll just follow the same route tomorrow. Totally fine. But if you have that happen 3 days in a row, or if they start roadworks and you notice it on your first day, the next day you'll change it because you can see with clarity what the problem is and how it's going to impact you getting to where you want to go. When we use that kind of repetition in thinking, it's not as easy to see because it's not on the outside of us so often. It's more on the inside, and it shows up through the way other people engage with us. And so it's very easy for us to bypass responsibility and say, it's your fault, and we use the blame, deny, justify, defend. We use criticism and contempt, and we assume that it's their fault. We don't see potentially that it's our repetition in our thinking that has got us to a place where we're not very happy. And this is, in a marriage, a really easy trap to fall into. Might be one of the biggest traps, which is you haven't challenged your thinking. You haven't seen the role that you play in this. You assume that you're correct because you've always done it like this, or you've always thought like this, or this is the way your family of origin do it, and this is the way it is. And that, of course, might not match your partner, your husband's experience of life, who had a different family of origin, who has a different brain and a different way of interacting in the world and a different set of life experiences to you. And so when you're first in a new couple, that's kind of okay because you see each other and all of the beauty is magnified. But after a few years, then we start to see the shadows that are magnified. And when two people are unable to find each other because both of their brains are using heuristics to override what they would do if they could see themselves more clearly, then we start to have these kinds of things, this sense of not being heard, not being understood, not being well loved, not being cared for, not being appreciated. And what unlocks this is usually a change to the way that you think and see the situation, and then a way that you show up differently. But because it's inside you, it takes years and years and years of things not working before you start to say, okay, we really need some help here. And so remember, it takes couples about 6 years to seek help. And by the time that they seek help, they're usually in deep crisis. And then, of course, they go and try and find help with therapists or counselors who aren't well trained in this space. The couples space is a very definitive set of skills that is required, that is not taught in undergrad. It is not taught in postgrad. You have to actively seek it if you are a therapist, and you actively have to go and get the skills you need to be able to do your work. And in the couple space. And most couples therapists don't do that. They're like, I'm really good at seeing one person, I'll just see both. Can't be that hard. And the skill set you need for individual therapy and the skill set you need for couples, chalk and cheese, entirely different. But you know that because you've heard me here harping on about that before. And so then these couples that have thinking problems and doing problems and an inability to see themselves and how they are the problem, go to a therapist who can't help them see it either. And so they use their one shot after 6 years of pain and it doesn't work. And the marriage then starts the death spiral. And that is very often where I find my clients. They've tried everything, hasn't worked. And when we start working with them, it is very much about, my husband is this and this and this and this. My husband won't. My husband, if only. My husband should. Why doesn't he? It's not okay. It's not going to work. I'm upset. I'm hurt. And all of that, now that I've explained what I've just been talking about, all of that is a brain that says, my heuristic, my rule of thumb, the way I show up in relationships and the world isn't working, and I can't compute that, and so it has to be about somebody else. And my friends, it's never about somebody else. It's always about you, and it's always about them. See how I just contradicted myself? And so what we need to do always is come into any kind of couples work, understanding that your thinking and his thinking has made the problem happen. So what is that? What is the heuristic? What is the rule of thumb? What is the set of if this, then that set of brain thinking that you have and you've inherited it from your family of origin, or you have created it based on who you were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and you haven't updated that rule of thumb, you haven't looked at it and said, oh, I've kind of outgrown that, or I want to upgrade that. And you're working off old prototypes, you're working off old operating systems. And when you've got two people who are working off those things, we've got two people that came from a family of origin who weren't very good at communicating or conflict resolution or loving each other well or being supportive and caring and kind under pressure, then you've got it magnified. And the easiest thing for a brain to do is to blame someone else, because the alternative is really painful. If this is really me, then I am not worth very much to have hurt someone I love as much as I love you. And my friends, these two things are things I talk about with my clients every single call. And we run a 2-hour call twice a week. And we have 4 virtual rooms. And this is the crux of it, the crux of every room. How do I be okay with myself knowing that I've hurt you and I didn't mean to? How am I okay with you who hurt me and perhaps you didn't mean to, or probably you didn't mean to? And how do we unpack all of that? How do we heal all of that? And how do we rewrite all of that? And this, if this can give you any insight as to what is possible, then hear this. Your beautiful brain can learn anything, but it cannot learn something it doesn't see. It has to recognize what is happening. And that, my friends, is taking something that is primarily unconscious to you, which is your thinking, and bringing it up and out into the surface so that you can see it laid out. And when you see it laid out, it might not represent you in a way that you're comfortable with. You might see this, the warts and all side of yourself. And what I want you to know is that everybody has warts and all. Everybody does. And getting comfortable with who that part of you is, and getting to know that part of you, and then helping that part of you heal and grow, that is the beginning of change. When you see it, when you have clarity, you can see where you are and what you want to get to, and then you're looking for, how do I get across? How do I get from here to here? And that will be through a whole lot of things. If you're working with me, it will be through understanding your thinking, understanding where you've come from, understanding where you want to go to, understanding what gaps you have in skills and competencies, and understanding what blocks you have in being able to access your connection to yourself and your love for yourself. All of those things take time to unpack and take skill and wisdom for you to be able to see it, because sometimes brains like to keep things unconscious. I don't want you to know about it. They're worried for your safety. If you really knew that you had this part of you that was, as you might describe, bad or hurtful to others or dark, then would you be all right? And so the brain says, I'm worried that you won't be okay. Let's make it about that person. It is that person's fault. It is that person's fault. If only they would do this, if only they would do that. And the truth is, if you didn't have that hole in you, that wouldn't hurt. You'd see that as somebody who was hurting and it wasn't about you. And so, my friend, if you are listening to this, then you are like every other human. You have holes. You have thinking that isn't serving you. You have a marriage that has got two people whose thinking isn't serving them and don't have the skills to do it differently. But that doesn't mean it can't be done differently. It just means you need something new. And so my masterclass is a really good resource for you to start with. You can book a free breakthrough call with me and my team. If that calls to you, if that speaks to you, that's totally fine. Otherwise, you can get started on this yourself. Your job is to notice. Your job is to map it. Your job is to rewrite it. And you will get stuck on this. It's not easy. And the biggest pitfall is that you'll give up. So that's why you need a team, and that's why you need help. And probably that's why you're here, because you know that we are the team that will help. And so we're here to help. All right, my darlings, stay safe out there in quarantine land, hands washed, hearts open. Allow yourself to see the opportunities that your brain has for you to get an upgrade on how you live your life and how you experience your life, and that all of that is available right now. I love you. I'll see you soon. Much love. Bye, darlings. Thank you for tuning into today's show. If you're feeling fired up and you're ready to grow and you want to know more about how to do that, here is what I want you to do now. I want you to watch my marriage masterclass. This masterclass will show you how my clients have turned their struggling marriages into thriving marriages, even without their husband's buy-in. How my clients have gone from cycles of poor communication, disconnect and loneliness to being teammates and soulmates with their husbands again, even after they've already tried everything. And the proven system my clients use to start transforming their marriages in minutes, not years, because life is too precious to waste one more minute in an unhappy and unfulfilling marriage. So if this is what you're looking for, I want you to click the link